Alright boys, this is the first startup since I swapped in my SCP-1000s last night. Let's see how this goes. I spilled a lot of fuel everywhere. The LSA stuff is less than ideal to work around. And I just changed the SCP data and I left everything else alone. So it's kind of going to be like a how is this even going to run test. Well then, that wasn't bad at all, huh? So guys, I made a big change all at once. And I swapped to Snake Eater 1000s while I changed over to all the active nitrous stuff. On top of that, I enabled injector phasing, which is something I started doing but never did to this vehicle. So that actually changes the injector timing on top of it. So now I'm just driving around and cleaning up my fuel tables, which are very rich. Even at idle I had to pull over 35% because the way it was injecting before was wasting a lot of fuel, but burning it correctly at the correct air fuel, right? So now, with the injector spraying only when the valve is open, it's getting much more fuel when it needs it, and it can cut a lot of it out. So what's cool is you get a smoother idle, a cleaner idle, a less smelly idle, and you're using less fuel cruising and idling. And another thing is it looks like I'm going to have to change my IAC, like where the thing idles, because it's actually trying harder to idle now too. So I have to mess with a few things now. I'm trying to get a bunch of miles on my twin disc, which is I'm learning where the twin disc grabs. And what's funny about the twin disc is, I'm sorry if I'm yelling, I want to make sure you can hear me. The car's actually not that loud. What's funny about the twin disc is it's very gentle, and then you're like, oh, and you go to lift, and then it's really has a ton of clamping and grabbing force out of nowhere. So you get you're like, oh, I'll just lift really quick, and then boom, it stuffs you. Heat's on in the car. It's like boiling me out. Here we go. Ah, that's nicer. Now I have some ventilation without having my windows down. So this is in 6th gear at like $2,000. Already a couple pounds of boost, and the closed loop is pulling 10% there. It was yanking like 40% at cruise. Yeah, it needs work everywhere. So as I'm driving, I'm applying the learn, so where I'm driving will smooth out. Yeah, now I'm within like a percentage everywhere, except for if I roll into it here a tiny bit. Yeah, closed loop's only doing -4 now, and I'm in 6th gear, and from 44 miles an hour there, I rolled from 2,000 to like 2,500. I'm already doing like 70, and I have to hit the brakes. The part throttle power on this thing is it's laughable, especially for, this car has aggressive short gearing, and the blower just with power everywhere, and the transmission has short gearing. It couldn't be more fun, honestly. The car is kind of useless, but that also makes it kind of fun. I mean, I'm not a big street racer at all, and I don't really care. I'm getting like a little bit of weird clutch noise this time. I didn't have it before, so I wonder what's going on there. I don't know if I need to bleed my clutch again, or if I'm not disengaging, or if it's just noisy sometimes while it's breaking in, like that. Like it sounds like it's grinding, right guys? It's in car to about 580 wheel and continue on with the nitrous stuff, just as a precaution, so I didn't have like a super hot base tune-up in it. And everybody said they missed the videos where I would drive around, so honestly, it finally isn't pouring again. And I can drive a car like this. I mean, you can drive it normally, but it's no fun to... You can putz this like it's my Kia, but it's way more fun to just to hit like all that low-end torque. I'm in 6th gear at 1700, and I can just roll and like rear end all these people. It's insane. Oh yeah, now I'm logging snout KPA also. Next time I roll into it a few times into boost, I should be logging that, and I'll see if there's an intake restriction even at low boost and part throttle. So we'll start logging now. Oh nice, a lot of garbage in the road from the landscape place. Stones, mud, whatever, they can't help it. This car's not that nice. It's not someone's cherry ZR1. Yeah, I think that's just the clutch making noise now that it's got maybe it's a tiny bit rusty from all the wetness and humidity and up and down temperatures, like a brake rotor also. So we'll just drive it more and see if it makes those noises. We'll just abort this log. No sense making a really long one of me idling. All right, pull out. Doesn't change. Really, it's fun to drive. Obviously, this car is really fun to drive. And I found out my front end clunk's really bad, and I always thought it was something in the coilover, shock mount, something. And all of it's always looked good. Even when I did my brakes, I checked everything. What I did find is I mentioned it in one of my videos, my sway bar mounts are gone. Literally, the one side is just metal and frame, so it's just the sway bar clunking. I would notice it when I drove over something, so I'm like, oh, it's the shock absorber, or where it's mounting, or something. It just has no isolator and it's just clunking. But no, it's actually like over a transition, over a driveway or a bump, it knocks the sway bar into the frame, I believe. So I bought those from Rock Auto. This is 5th gear at $2,000 and like 30% throttle. Disgusting. Really, really crazy. I'm just braking all the time. It reminds me of, I had a Suzuki B-King, and it was a naked bike with straight bars, and it had a Gen 2 Hayabusa 1340cc engine, and it just made so much power everywhere. You could throw up 100-mile-an-hour wheelies in 1st gear. You could just yank the nose at 20 miles an hour at 2,000 RPM and then ride them out over 100 in 1st. I even geared it down and it would still do 100 in 1st gear. It was just the same as this. You feel like you're always on the brakes. You're like, why do the brakes suck? The fact is, the brakes are great. It's just you're going fast all the time. Like, you're not trying and you're just going fast. And you're like, man, I have to keep braking. It's just because everyone else in the world isn't speeding. I mean, I'm lugging it, so I'm at 1400. I'm noticing some cam surge, and I'm like, why is it surging? I look over, I'm at like 1406. No kidding. Alright, so let's save this log quick. Put it in 3rd at a 25 roll, 1800. especially with the overdriven crank now, it just makes so much boost early. I'm actually sure that I'm at the limit of the blower, and I'm probably just overspinning it over 6500. I noticed some weird power lines. I should probably just put a bigger upper pulley on and just use the overdrive off of the crank. So I should probably get an upper pulley made that's just not as aggressive now. I don't need to spin the blower that hard. I don't need to make the heat. So all my wiring and my fans and everything are working good. All that stuff's happy. My coolant temp's 188. Fans aren't even coming on. With the LOJ package radiator from CNR, like, just rolling is enough to keep the car cool. Even on hot days, I noticed exactly the same thing. Go around the mailman here. There's a nice front end clunk. So yeah, maybe my clutch had like weird spots on it from the humidity has been all over the place. My garage is wet one day, it's hot the next day, it's freezing, and no humidity the next day. So it seems like my clutch has, I'm not getting that noise, the input shaft noise anymore. So something was probably just scaly or something, just like your brakes would get, I assume. Making wild assumptions. It is cool to drive this thing though. Always tons of fun. Man, that blower is just singing all the time now with this pulley combo. All I hear now is just pulley screaming. Too. It's like stumbly when I want to pull out. Ladybug. They're good luck. Toss them out the window. I actually might have to put a different expo curve in my throttle because it's just really stabby now. And what was nice before is it was easier to drive with the other. I have my throttle matched to my pulley combo prior. Actually, I haven't even, once this thing cools off, I have to top off my coolant. I don't think I've run it since I did more water stuff. Other than the straight to the dyno, I don't think I've checked my coolant. Yeah, 195, fans came on, kicked it right back down. I'm in 6th, like, idling again, and it's just an animal. It's really crazy. It's something, this is why people love blower cars. I mean, you might not have that crazy top end power, but holy shit, like, you just have that stab. It's crazy, the stab. Another ladybug. Okay, so we should be recording. Looks like we're recording, and it looks like I'm getting audio on my good mic and not the other ones. So we'll go over the overview here. What I ended up doing we will explain. I swapped to SEP 1000s. This is my slightly reformed fuel table from the drive today. So what I did was I went from FIC 1000s to SEP 1000s in the blower height, LSA size guys. And then also on the FIC injectors, I had never set up the phasing, which is this, where it takes your cam measurements and applies it to the injector timing, and it tries to only inject fuel when the valves are open. And what's neat about that is my first startup was very good, but it was pulling like 40% of fuel because it was wasting all of that fuel by spraying at not when the valve is opening. So that's a neat little thing there. A lot of my cruise and idle fueling changed significantly. Up top, not too much, using a little bit less up top, and that might be because the SEPs are on the larger end of the 1000 cc flow range from these FICs. Not a whole lot, and then also I think that even then the injector phasing is still making a difference of using less injector because it's using more of the injector effectively. Anyway, so I data logged it, and we're going to go over what I also did was the snout map sensor. So this is when I smashed on it pretty good. I can show you this log. So this was like a lot of tire spin and rev limiter here. But what you need to see is right about here, I have it on boost, I believe. Snout map sensor, yeah. So right here, the barometer is the internal map sensor in the ECU. That's like basically the weather. That's atmosphere right now. So this is obviously the map sensor in the manifold, in boost. And then this is the snout map sensor reading a deficit. It's not reading barometric. So it's already a restriction. And then as the RPM comes up, it becomes more of a restriction. So at 4,300, it's at 96. So it has a small deficit. And then even at 5,800 I lifted and it was already in a deficit more. So it's kind of hard. It's rowdy on the street, and I just wanted to get some shakedowns in and fix my fuel map a tiny bit, make sure it was okay before I take it to the dyno. So we will see how much it drops off the more RPM I get. And then this is intake and snout right here. I pulled the intake off and made a dyno pull. It made no horsepower difference. So what we're looking at is just a snout flow issue, which I thought about just doing a test of the ported snout. Enough of my friends are like, porting the snout makes no sense because then your blower is under a deficit. You have to do both to see the gain of this. And then what you can see there is if you still have a restriction, you swap on like 102. If you make the port 102 millimeter opening and you have a restriction with the 92 millimeter throttle, then you go to a 102 and then this goes away and then you pick up even more. So I would like to eventually do that, but I don't feel like the car is getting back together now. It's almost completely done. I just want to spray it a little bit and have some fun with that, move on to the truck and do the fuel pumps and push that. And then once the truck is done, I'm getting a lot of the Mustang stuff, which I guess I should start making videos about the Mustang. I want to get more parts in and get the engine together. And then I'm going to send the transmission that we're pulling out of the truck, putting in a built transmission into the truck. The truck has a known good working ADE, so that's perfect to build from since it's not broken. So it'll be even cheaper to build. It'll be easier for someone to build, in which case it's my friend who's building it. So I want to make it as easy as possible for him. Moving on, the ADE out of the truck is going to get built for the Mustang. So then once the trans is done and there's enough of the engine together to make it worthwhile installing it in the car, is when that engine will come out of the car. I don't want to have a car that's just sitting with no way of moving it. Nothing frustrates me more than having a vehicle that doesn't run on its own. So taking apart one or two at a shot is a no-go. So that's not going to happen until I can get to that stage. Luckily, I'm getting a lot of stuff. So yeah, I said like I should make a video where I start to cover that. So it'll be neat to see what the nitrous does. Hopefully everything works out good. You can see here, what is it under basic fuel? I have everything. it's yanking a ton of fuel. It's pulling 15% out, and it's only using 53% of the injector, but that's at 6,000. So it's gonna go up a tiny bit. So it's neat to see. But prior I was at like, the high was a 68% and the low was a 65. So right around there, I assume the phasing is gonna get me maybe a little bit of injector back. So in the 60 range. So I have that 30-some% of injector available for the nitrous. So we're gonna hit it light and work our way in and see how everything else goes, right guys? So I even detuned it slightly for this drive, but there's a whole bunch of information right there for you. There's a nice fuel deficit. The fuel pressure looks good. I believe I have it on sensors, all of my pressures. Yeah, 49 down here, 67 PSI up here. Battery voltage is still good at higher RPMs. Everything looks good. I was talking about in my video, the manifold temperature is at a higher resting average with this setup that's much smaller and condensed in the front end. There's only like 2 gallons of water in it beside from 10, but the car doesn't heat up as fast. The faster you're going with the car, the faster it's cooling down and the longer it's taking to get hot, I'm noticing. So that's all good. I like that. I like how that all turned out. The system is much simpler now and smaller. The biggest thing is that it's a huge square. It's like a pizza box, and most of the front end is blocking it. So other than drilling into, there's a giant aluminum bumper support there, drilling the bumper support, not really a huge fan of that. I thought for fun to put an electric fan on it, like temporarily mount it and turn the fan on every now and then and see if I can't knock the temperature down on the heat exchanger, just as a fun situational experiment, right? Because it does not have very good airflow and it's still working really well. So part of me is like, well, if I'm sitting somewhere and it's just soaking, would a fan dramatically drop the temperature because of this huge flat surface area of this thing? A simple fan might be all this thing needs to really bring the temperature down. So that's another future experiment I'd like to possibly get into if I care after all of this. Obviously, and the temperature is going to be extremely low when you spray it. So all of that stuff will happen also. Anyway, I figured I'd put the exciting clip first, so that you guys could quit immediately after if you didn't want to see the drive around and ramble. A lot of people do want to see the drive around and ramble, so I did. And then here's the facts, as a lot of other people like. So some people want all of it. I put the good stuff right in the beginning. You can quit right after that. So let me know if you guys have questions. Really neat to see everything is working good. All of the nitrous stuff should be good. What else do I have here? Nothing else. I went over it all with the thing. I had some screenshots of the map sensor back and forth and everything else. So we're good. Let me know if you have questions. Goodbye.